Hey guys and gals. I've got some great stories for you today. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Cast: me F16 at the time. BF, my boyfriend, M17 at the time. Annie, M's daughter, F3 at the time. M, man at the help desk. ND, nice dad. M, the reason why you're here. P1 and P2, policeman 1 and 2. Important note, I live in a fairly small town, so many people know each other. This happened last year, mid-June. We were on a break from school and BF and I decided to get some snacks for a movie date. As one does, we go to the supermarket and start grabbing our stuff. We were debating which cider, I'm a lightweight, I should grab when I see Annie enter the aisle. She looked scared and was crying a little bit. As anyone with a little bit of a heart would do, we leave the cider for now and go to see what's the matter. Me, hey there, are you okay? What's wrong? Annie looked up at me, Mommy. Me, oh, have you lost your mom? She sniffles and nodded. Me, well, we're going to help you find her, is that okay with you? I'm me and this is BF, what's your name? Annie. I took her by the hand and walked up to the help desk, while BF paid for the groceries. We didn't get cider. I notified the man working the desk that Annie had lost her mother. He was very kind and asked for Anna's name and family name so he could make a call on the microphone, which went about like this: M. The little Annie X has lost her mother. Could the mother of Annie X present herself at the reception desk? Annie was sat on a little bench that was facing the exit, that way, she could have seen if her mother was headed out. It was rush hour, Friday, around 5 p.m., so it took BF a while to pay for everything it get to us. By that time, another message was sent around the store. Poor Annie was scared, as she kept asking where her mommy was. We tried to entertain her. M allowed her to read a book from the book aisle, to prevent her from freaking out too much. After 1 hour, she claimed she was hungry, which seems fair since it was probably around 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. We didn't have very healthy food with us, but gave her a little snack, a sponge stuffed with chocolate shaped like a bear. Look up Lulu Lursan. This went on until 1:30 hour after the first call was made. M pulled BF and I aside for a minute, saying that they were obligated to call the police because this could be a case of child abandonment. This was a relief in a way, because the police would know how to take care of her a little better. About 10 minutes later, 2 policemen showed up and came inside. BF, M and I were first asked about the situation. Annie was asked a couple of questions too. P1, hi Annie, I'm P1, I'm here to help you find your mommy. Annie, is mommy in trouble? P1, no, don't worry, she's not in trouble, and neither are you. If we want to find her quickly, I'm going to need to know what she looks like. Do you think you can help me? Annie nodded and described her mom's hair color, eye color and very roughly what she was wearing, mostly colors, since she was only about 3. Well, shortly after that, a man and a woman entered the store, while the man was running like crazy and the woman walking slowly behind him. The man was calling for Annie, looking so worried. This prompted Annie to look up and her face lit up. She ran up to them screaming, "Mommy! Daddy!" ND hugs her and looked so relieved. He was apologizing to her so many times. The police still asked to see both of their IDs just to confirm that they were indeed Annie's parents, but that seemed to be more of a formality since Annie was the one to recognize them. P2 asked them what happened, and what we heard shocked us. M, well, I was doing my groceries, but Annie was being annoying, so I sent her to look at toys. And well, I just forgot she was there and went home. It's only when ND came home from work that we noticed she wasn't here. P2, miss, you do realize that your daughter could have been kidnapped. If these 2 hadn't been there, gestures towards us, who knows what could have happened to her. M, well then it's fine, why make such a big deal out of it? Why did you 2 even call the police? Are you trying to get me arrested? BF, we didn't call the police, M did because it's apparently store policy. We didn't know what was going on. This could have been a case of child abandonment. M was not pleased by this comment, clearly. M, how dare you? Are you telling me I'm a bad mother? Is that what you're insinuating, young man? Before BF could reply, ND gave her a look that would make anyone shut up right away. I bet he's a teacher. After a bit more talk, the little family were allowed to leave, and so were we. ND thanked us profusely for our time. We went home, had our movie night, but I think about that sometimes. This woman was so careless with her kid it baffles me. EP, entitled parent, I don't remember whether male or female. F1, friend 1. F2, friend 2. B, younger brother. So a while ago, our family had a few friends over for a barbecue. I was 12 at this time, so I was happy that their children, F1 and F2 were the same age as B and me. We have a pretty big garden, so we play tag, hide and seek etc. Eventually, we start throwing water balloons, and play with any water we can find. Naturally, we are screaming and shouting, because we are having fun, not because of hypothermia. We play for a short time, until we hear EP shouting from over the hedge, "EP, shut the F up." We laugh about it, but take no further notice. We just assume they aren't talking to us. We continue playing, until we hear them yell again. "EP, shut the F up and go home." We didn't know what to do, so we asked our parents. They said, "It's our garden, so we should just be allowed to do what we want, right?" Anyway, the EP continues to yell some things I would rather not type, but it was along the lines of, "Shut up, I'm playing a card game with my kid." We understood they want some peace and quiet, so we play quieter. After another minute we hear EP yell again, "EP, I'm calling the cops." At this point our parents heard, and went over to pay them a little visit. After a few minutes of procrastination, the EP did call the cops, who were incredibly helpful, and just said the same thing: their garden, their rules. The events of this story occurred in 1982, a year before I was born. My dad told me all about it some time ago. My parents had recently gotten married. My cousin, aunt's son was 6 at the time and my uncle had recently lost his job. My grandmother insisted that my dad support his sister in her time of need. This meant letting my aunt and cousin move in until my uncle could find a job. Uncle too of course would be welcome whenever he decided to show up. My parents' house had only 2 bedrooms. One was occupied by Grandmonster, the other by my parents. Here in India it is customary for elderly parents to live with their adult sons. She insisted that my parents give up their bedroom to aunt and cousin, because she couldn't imagine her little girl having to sleep in the living room. My dad didn't want to upset his mother and he agreed. My aunt and cousin stayed for over a month and my uncle too would come over on the weekends. Grandmonster insisted that my mother cook for them whatever they demanded. So, my mom would come home from work and would cook 3 different meals. One in accordance with my cousin, one according to my aunt's preference and a third for herself, my dad and Grandmonster. On weekends, when my uncle came over, his preference would have to be catered to as well. But were they ever grateful? Hell no. They felt perfectly entitled to boss my mom around and find faults in her efforts to make them comfortable. Nothing she ever did for them was good enough. Aunt and Grandmonster would constantly criticize her cooking and housekeeping skills. When my dad did his share of housework, they'd mock him for being henpecked. Almost every other day, my aunt would invite her friends over and they stay for hours and my mom would have to cook refreshments for them as well. Anytime my mom wanted to invite her friends over, my Grandmonster would put on a scowl that could suck the soul off of a dementor, but aunt's friends were welcome of course. The one time my dad put his foot down was when aunt wanted to invite a friend of hers to stay for the weekend. Interestingly, my uncle's sister, aunt's sister-in-law, found aunt and uncle's behavior to be quite inappropriate. She visited once and clearly didn't like the way my mother was being treated. She was a strong, no-nonsense kind of woman and called out my aunt for not being grateful for the way my mom and dad were putting up with her and told her she should stop being a burden and should help out with the housework. My dad tells me that the concern an outsider had shown for her well-being, that should have been expected from family members, brought tears to my mom's eyes. My aunt cried over this too, but for entirely different reasons. She beached to my Grandmonster that my parents had made her look bad in front of her husband's sister. My Grandmonster reprimanded my parents for making her cry and my mom ended up apologizing to my aunt just to keep the peace. It turns my stomach when I think about this. Finally my uncle found a new source of income and aunt and cousin moved back in with him. But not before they took my parents' TV with them. Back then, televisions were a novelty for middle-class households in India. My aunt and uncle didn't have one. My mom and dad had just bought theirs. My Grandmonster made my parents give up their television to my aunt, because they'd been through such a tough time and they'd give it back once they could afford to buy their own. Needless to say, the TV was never returned. What did you think? What would you have done differently? Share your opinions in the comments. And if you enjoyed the stories, slap that like and subscribe button for more of them, and don't forget to support the original writers with an upvote. Links are in the description. Peace out, and catch you tomorrow.